Good morning. Uh, my name is Kristle Helmuth. Depending on who you are or where we are, you may know me as something else. I wear a lot of hats, a lot of things to a lot of different people. I'm a mom, an Army veteran. I'm an employee where I get to serve military and veteran families every single day. I'm a daughter, a sister, a friend. I'm a student. I'm a lover of college football. Go Gators. Yes. Yes, I'm super blessed. I'm looking around and I see all these familiar faces. This room is full of love and power and resiliency. It's a safe space. I don't know about you guys, but when I can't sleep, I do the mindless social media scroll. Sit there, I'm like, oh, that's funny, haha, whatever. So the other night, I was scrolling through and I saw a quote and it stopped me. I read it a couple times and it really resonated with me about what is going on in this room. It said this: shame dies when stories are told in safe places. I'm going to say that again. Shame dies when stories are told in safe places. So I won't lie to you, this was a little bit of a gut punch to me in a way, because I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say when I came up here, and I was going to do that thing where I come up and I'm like, hey, I'm Kristle, skim over what I am, what you think I do, keep it positive and uplifting and be on my way, right? But I felt guilty in that moment. I kind of felt fraudulent. I was convicted in that moment to tell you a little bit of a different story. So there's a very important piece of who I am that I left out. And those of you that know me were probably like, wait, what? And ready to call me out on it. But this piece isn't necessarily about who I am. It's more about what I was. Early January 2018, I was 2 hours from home when I got a call that would change my life forever. My husband of 13 years collapsed at home with my 7-year-old daughter and was being transported to the hospital. This was a normal occurrence, as he was wounded in Iraq years earlier and lived with those impacts. I still rushed out as quickly as I could, even though we knew my daughter had a plan. We had a plan. We had the list of medications she was to give to the EMTs, a list of who she was to call, where she was to go. She knew exactly what to do. But I rushed out so quickly that I stole from a candy store. I did admit it later to the police officer, but that's a story for another day. So halfway into the drive, the doctor called me to tell me that nothing further could be done to save my husband. I begged her to keep trying. Please, just keep him alive until I get there. He needed to know that I was there. The doctor told me I needed to pull over and call someone to bring me up to the hospital. I didn't. Instead, I kicked a gas pump and I screamed. I called a friend to take my children to say goodbye to their father, and I drove myself the remaining hour to the hospital. The night was a complete blur, and the days and months that would follow were the hardest of my life. There's very few things that I remember very vividly from that night. One of them was eating a disgusting gummy pickle from said candy store. And being on the phone with Boston University as we decided to donate my husband's brain for CTE research. I had an amazing support system that night, and in the days following, a community who wrapped their arms around me in huge, huge ways. But I felt like I was alone, like this was a journey I had to walk on my own. I was a wife. I was his wife. Was. He was gone and he wasn't coming back. For a few years, I did a really good job stuffing it. I kept things very surface level. I was a leader in the community, working in different veteran organizations and spaces. I'd always been the positive force in people's lives, and I felt like they needed me to continue to do that. Nate's death had a huge impact on our community, and I had guided many people through that grief and through grief in months and years prior to that in my journey out of the military and into the role of a wounded warrior wife. I had literally done all of this with others before, and in my mind, this time shouldn't have been any different. I'd always thrived in that environment, helping others, helping them see the pathways to living their best lives, so I knew I was doing all the right things. I got my kids in counseling, I got me in counseling, we read all the books. I made sure I was carrying on his legacy and living a life that would make him proud. But somewhere along the way, even though I me. The reality was I wasn't putting in the work. I did all the external things, checked the blocks, but I wasn't digging deep enough to put in the actual work. I pretended I was fine most days so no one would ask me if I was okay, so I wouldn't have to lie when they did. At night, I'd cry myself to sleep, hoping that my kids didn't know, because I didn't want them to think that I couldn't help them get through this because I was too hurt. I didn't know that this was hurting them more. When asked, I always defaulted to telling my husband's story, not mine, and making sure everything was about honoring him. I was afraid if I admitted that I was not okay, that others would suffer. I was always the one who held it together. What would happen when I couldn't? I went down a pathway of making terrible life decisions, and I listened to no one when they called me out on it. I just thought they didn't want to see me happy. I told everyone, including my doctors and therapists, exactly what they wanted to hear to keep them from asking more. I drank a lot. I spent money like it was nobody's business. I ate my feelings. I dove head over heels into a new relationship and rode the high to the extreme. Anything to avoid feeling. I'd convinced myself that this was like a second chance. I could love and have fun and ignore all the things. You only live once, right? I figured if I wasn't around the people who knew me, and very few people knew everything about my past life, that they wouldn't ask and it wouldn't hurt. I was very wrong. Things continued to get worse. This caused me to lose my spark. Even the spark I had to carry on my husband's legacy dwindled. I walked away from my volunteer opportunities. I walked away from environments where I thrived because it made the pain of losing Nate so real. It made me feel, and I was not going to do that. I joke that I was such a good actress that I should have been in Hollywood. I was so good, in fact, that until recently, I had not spoke out about how hard things had gotten during my journey and that I had thoughts of suicide. I just wanted to be with him, the man I literally grew up with, the father of my children, my very best friend. And I didn't say anything during those times because I thought I could handle it all myself. I didn't want to burden anyone else because I had convinced myself that even though I told people every day that it was okay to feel this way, it wasn't okay for me to feel this way. And because I didn't want my husband's legacy to become about how I reacted after his death. It'll be 6 years in January since I lost my Nate, and it wasn't until a little over 2 years ago that I finally hit that breaking point. I had accepted that my new perfect relationship had failed. I was parenting 2 teenagers and now an infant that we threw into the mix, working full-time, trying to complete my MBA. It was a dumpster fire, no joke. I had no idea what was next for me, and even though that hurt, it brought a lot of unresolved things to the forefront. I learned that it was the hurt from years earlier that I had stuffed that would knock me to the ground again. Only this time, I had the strength and clarity to ask for help. I came to the realization that this time, I wasn't as good at hiding things as I was before. But all the safe places and safe people I had were there all along. I was rejecting them. These safe places and people gave me the space to tell my story without shame and really acknowledge the level of hurt that was inside of me. Through a lot of therapy and a lot of tears and a lot of questioning what the heck I was even doing, I discovered something. This was a surprise. Doing the work works. And nobody expected me to not hurt. Everybody expected me to hurt. They knew that, but I'm stubborn and I ignored that. I finally feel like I'm on my way back up from this painful fall. I still have a long way to go, we all do. But no matter what, this is always going to hurt. I've since started a new career. I recently got accepted into Florida State, where I'll pursue a second master's degree, this time in social work. I know I said go Gators earlier. That was not a mistake. I've already apologized to Nate, who is Florida alumni, so he won't haunt me or whatever. But I know he would understand because he's always been my #1 fan. The only bad decisions I'm making these days are sometimes eating the dessert and trying to date during football season. This time, it isn't like it was before. This time is very different. This time I'm talking about it all. Good, bad, ugly, talking about it all. There's days I bring up my husband's death in conversations about Tupperware. Like, oh yeah, Nate liked lids. What? I think I do that because I want someone to ask. I want to get it out. I want to laugh. I want to cry. I want people to ask if I'm okay so that if it's one of those days, I can say, no, I'm not okay. And that is okay. Thanks.